a lot of persons who have inherited their land in Trinidad and Tobago would recognize that they may have inherited land tenants. It was a very common practice many years ago, and so you would see quite a number of persons who have inherited their lands, also inheriting persons who would have rented the lands from their foreparents, right? It's not a very common practice today, right? I would say not within the last 20 years, you don't have people entering into renting their lands. They will either lease it or sell it bona fide. However, years ago, annual rents and land renting was very, very common. It's a very common practice. And so you found a lot of persons having inherited persons who would have had that agreement with their great grandparents. And I mean, for very small amounts of money, obviously, right? Some cents, sometimes a few dollars. And obviously, it is not a profitable or lucrative thing to continue, even though the landlord is not required to do a lot of maintenance. It is a very hands-off arrangement. However, it does not honor or it does not present a landowner with the true optimized value for their land at all. I would often always tell persons to consider leasing or, of course, selling.
Yes. I know one of the most common figures in land rental is $500. I don't know where this $500 came out from.
Yeah.
For the year. If you could only rent land for $500 a year, that would be great. But
which works out about $40 a month. You renting your land to people for $40 a month. Obviously, that's not making a lot of sense today. Now we're talking about acres.
Yeah, true. So we see that inflation alone has really outstripped that archaic way of doing things. Yeah?
Yes.
It definitely has. So we have some. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the previous installments of this topic, what we would have looked at is the very technical aspects of it, because we had, I think, for the first part one, we had a client who we would have dealt with, and we brought him on, Mr. Ramu, to give his first-hand testimony of the whole process, having gone through that. So he would have inherited 51 tenants, right, that were renting lands before he was born. And these are people that would have had created a tenure for themselves over 90-something years, in some cases, renting land for 90-something years. You often hear the terminology, the regularization of these tenants. And what we mean by that is converting their tenancy into ownership of some sort, either by virtue of statutory lease first, which is required under legislation, and then, of course, as an outright owner, letting them create their own legal title or interest in the lands. And the benefit that is for the tenant, and this even I want to talk about, because we're talking about the legal requirements. I want to discuss the benefits and for both parties in this arrangement, both for the landlord and both for the tenant, right? And so we'll be taking a very keen look at the legislation that governs this conversation. Of course, due to the nature of our webinars, we will not be interpreting the law, because we can't do that, but we can simply regurgitate or recite the law verbatim. And I want to encourage every single person who is in this webinar this evening to go on to Google, right? And you Google Land Tenants Act. What ought to come up is a PDF version available to all members of the public of the Land Tenant Security of Tenure Act, Chapter 5954, Act 11 of 1981, as amended in 1983, and then in 2010. That's the one I'm using today, the Land Tenants Security of Tenure Act, chapter 59, 54. All right. And that is the guide here that the outline we're going to use to itemize the legal requirements to successfully stop renting your land. Or in other words, successfully doing property land regularization for tenants.
Very well, very well. So that is it. That is it. That is the act that governs this transaction, as we will see. But we got some questions that we'll probably begin to delve into, because usually we run out of time with the questions. We run out of time. So we have some questions that came in before, and we encourage our listening audience to send your questions that you may have in the chat, because it really helps to guide the conversation and direct it in a way where you would benefit the most, which is really the hope with regard to these webinars, right?
You're listening audience for it to be less boring about the legislation today and access to live question.
Yeah. So that's where we're getting at, right? It's really for you, the listening audience, right? So one of the first questions that we had from Ms. or Mrs. Hughes is, how do you go about renting your land? I'm sure we would have answered this, but we can probably briefly just tackle it. And I don't think we're giving legal advice, but I'm not sure why Mrs. Hughes, unless she has industrial or commercial land, why she may be wanting to rent. Maybe she didn't see this before renting your land. Maybe she saw just renting your land. Maybe she didn't see this stuff.
So Ms. Hughes, that's the wrong question for this webinar, because we're talking about stop renting your land. Let's start doing it. We're not encouraging land renting. But of course, I mean, I'm not familiar. I'm being very honest. I like to be straightforward. As I said, land renting is something that used to be done like 40-something years ago, obviously, before I was born. So I have never really seen clients or have clients come in and asking to rent their lands. However, I do know that it is an arrangement that isn't registered anywhere at Legal Affairs. I've never seen a land rental agreement, although one can be made. It is really something that was very governed by the warden's office. We call it the warden's office. It's really the Board of Inland Revenue tax division there, where they have the assessment number and all of that. And they have something called a tenant registry, where they will have a whole, record of all the tenants in a particular land, the landowner, the tenants, the payments collected for the rents by these tenants. It was a very archaic arrangement in the past for persons who could not afford title but would have been living on the lands. That's the best I can answer that question.
Yeah. So to answer Ms. Hughes, we in the business of helping persons, regulate or regularize tenants, existing tenants that may be on the land. Because that's where you begin to see the true value, as Ms. Danielle mentioned, optimizing that land, right? And they're very creative. I use the word creative in inverted commas, because it's not dishonest, it's very legal, very above board, but to help persons realize the value of your land, although it is already occupied, right? So that's where the direction the webinar is going, right? Another question by Ms. or Mrs. Delicia, right? She had a question regarding title searches. And maybe we can touch on that a little bit regarding the let's say you may be renting online, you don't know the owner, right? I'm sure there are cases like that in Trinidad, or there may be other instances where persons want to purchase lands or to sell lands, and they need to do proper searches. How can Danielle help in that regard?
Oh, we do title searches. We are known in the country for being some of the best title researchers, if I do say so myself. But it's really just because of the amount of years and the the experience, the conveyancing understanding and background, and of course the facilities and tools we have to be able to get proper title searches done, right? One of the main thing with title searches is that you have several places to go to know the truth about title. I have seen something over the years a lot of Trinidadians seem to do, and it happened with a current client we have, where the attorneys before them were relying on the records at the warden's office to give information on the title. That is not necessary, although an assessment number and information as relates to the land and the tax side is important for doing land transactions. It is not the governing and most necessary part of it. So title searches seek to verify, clarify, and identify the title history of the property and the owners involved in it, not just the transactions, but also the probate story of the land. Because we know that land can be transferred from one owner to the next several ways. There's the outright conveyancing, but there are also leases, there are mortgages, there are deeds of assent that are done after grant of probate. There is mortgage redemption, where perhaps the land was mortgaged and the mortgagor defaulted on the mortgage, and so the mortgagee got the land. There is caveats, there is judgments. A judgment was on the land, and the court, because of the judgment, made an order to switch landowners and all of that. So there are several different legal transactions in relation to title that affect the historical data or facts as it relates to the property that only a title search can get you. And of course, the warden's office search helps to verify if there's any liens. So title searches check for title encumbrances and verify, identify, and validate the title history. And then you have the tax or warden office searches that deal with the liens, or if there's anything owed on the land.